And also Marlene Wagner and her staff for helping to organize this and support things. You know, this is one of the really, I think it's one of the most exciting of these annual luncheons that I remember since I came. And it's exciting for the quality of the people who are going to be honored this afternoon. I wish I could join you and be with you. I'm leaving for China not too far from now, and I suddenly found out how much I haven't done yet. So I either leave it for somebody else to do, and they don't like that when deans behave that way, or I do it myself. So, but I did want to come by and congratulate Jacqueline McCroskey, who's really, I told her once that she was at the peak of her career, and she said, please keep reminding me of that. So I want to remind her one more time that she is at the peak of her career. She's made so many remarkable contributions to Los Angeles and to children and families. So I'm so glad that you've decided to honor her at this meeting. Frances Feldman. I thought when Frances turned 90, I thought, well, probably that's the end of the celebrations, because we had a whole year and just about everybody celebrated in a different kind of venue. And I thought, I can't think of anything else more we can do to show how much she has meant to us and to the school and to really to the tradition of social work. But now we found something. And I wish we had invented it specially for her. If I had thought about it, we would have. I can't think of anyone, again, who more deserves recognition in the Hall of Distinction, and I'm so pleased that this is going to take place. And then for this morning, I met Dolores Huerta for the first time, and I see how she changes the world. I just met with her for a half an hour, and I was ready to stay for the rest of the day. I mean, I could feel my blood's boiling. I'm ready to march on something. She has just a remarkable capacity to fuel your dreams. So I can see how she organized communities and organized people and set them off in new directions, which she is going to do for us as well, I think. So it's a wonderful luncheon, and thank you again for coming. It's very special to us in the School of Social Work to have the Social Welfare Archives as such an integral part. You know, we're only the second university in the country that has an archives program associated with it. Minnesota is the other one, and I think they got there the easy way because they have state money, they have all kinds of things. We got there the hard way, which is, of course, Frances, and then all the rest of you who have contributed and worked on this and set up documents and worked with university officials and beat me on the head for extra budget money and so on. So I feel especially proud because we did it the hard way. We did it the old-fashioned way. Yeah. So thank you, and I think you can finish your meal, or is something starting? Is something starting now? Oh, okay, something's starting now, so I'll turn this over to Dick.
Thank you, Marilyn. Ralph Fertig, who has been mentioned before, he's a clinical associate professor at USC School of Social Work, and he's a board member of the CSWA. And he will present the George D. Nickel Award for Outstanding Volunteer Service to Dolores Huerta, who is our keynote speaker. So, Ralph, would you come in?
About 50 years ago, Dolores Huerta was a school teacher in California, and she could no longer take the daily sight of barefooted children coming to class hungry, and decided she had to do something about it to deal with the root causes. And so, in the best tradition of social work, looking at as an evidence-based practice of teaching, of learning, of drawing from the community, she joined together with Fred Ross, a graduate of USC, who convinced her to join a group called the Community Service Organization. CSO was founded and immediately got involved in social action, electing the first Latino member of the city council, Ed Roybal, and Dolores was there campaigning for him, and she was there when he ran for Congress and became the first Latino congressman from the Los Angeles area. And she joined together with this other scrawny young man from the Los Angeles CSO, a guy named Cesar Chavez. And they together were convinced by Fred Ross that they ought to go out and organize the farm workers, the parents of those children who came to school barefooted and hungry. And after a while, it turned out that because of internal conflicts, CSO could not be the organizing agent for the farm workers. So Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez split off and formed the United Farm Workers of America. The rest is history, but it is studded with so much in the way of accomplishment and achievement. Dolores Huerta is the one who represented the farm workers in Sacramento, secured legislation allowing people to vote in the language of their origin, allowing people to take driver's licenses in Spanish, allowing persons who are not full citizens to receive public welfare, public assistance. She was in the forefront of every struggle for human dignity beyond the farm workers. I should tell you that this diminutive woman negotiated the first contract of farm workers with big corporate agribusiness, Shenley contract, made history, and really held them to it and got from them. Well, I'll let her tell you the story, because she tells it so much better. She went on to organize the famous grape boycotts with which we're all familiar. It was the only tool that people who did not have the protections of the National Labor Relations Act could turn to. And so this meant she went out into the community and organized communities east and west, went to Washington, D.C., finally got the Agricultural Labor Relations Act passed. There are more things about Dolores that she helped to achieve to make this a better world for all of us than you have time to hear me tell you here tonight, this afternoon. Dolores is, even today, the Vice President Emeritus of the United Farm Workers, and she's president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and we'll be working together with USC on a very special project that she discussed with the dean today. It's with a great deal of pleasure and a thrill that I introduce my good friend and Dolores Huerta and present her with this George D. Nickel Award. It is for volunteer service. What she did, she volunteered everybody into service in behalf of so many great causes. Dolores, please come forward. It is with great pleasure that on behalf of the California Social Welfare Archives that I present you with this award for your incredible service. I should say that Dolores joins with Jane Addams, Eleanor Roosevelt, Rosa Parks, and others as being, according to Ladies' Home Journal, one of the 100 most influential women of the 20th century. She was named by Ms. Magazine as Woman of the Year. The awards go on and on. This is a simple award. It can't match up with the others with which you have been recognized, but it comes from the heart of people who are in that vineyard, working with that population that you have always advocated and been the hero for. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very good, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is definitely an award that I will treasure. Social work has always been, I guess, one of my great loves, as I told the students earlier, next to dancing, right? And when I started going to college, that was my major, but then got a divorce and had 2 little children, so I switched it to my major to education, so I could have the same hours as my children did going to school. And it's interestingly enough that we know that, so, and I spoke to students earlier, that the social workers are sort of like the Marines, right? Because they're there at the front of all of the issues that we have in our society. They're the ones that are supposed to go out there and help people. But I think the greatest thing that I found out, because in the farm workers movement, although we were organizers, doing service work, as we called it, was a very big part of our organizing, because we were out there trying to tell workers that they could change their own futures by organizing. They didn't know who we were. Cesar and I had both been working in the Los Angeles area with the community service organization, and so we were going to, meet people in the San Joaquin Valley. Although there were some CSO chapters up and down the state, we were going to be talking to farm workers that had never been organized. So in order for them to really have some faith in what we were doing, we did service work. We fixed their immigration papers. We did their income taxes. We went down and fought with the welfare department. We had just gotten a law passed in Sacramento under CSO that was called the Aid to Needy Children of Unemployed or Underemployed Parents. And of course, all the farm workers, because their wages were so low, were all considered underemployed. So we would take them down there to the welfare department to be able to get them some type of assistance. That was before food stamps, of course, And so it was doing that work and doing the service work that we did kind of do that social work to help the farm workers have faith in the mission of organizing themselves into a union. And it worked. It absolutely worked. But the other great thing about doing this work at the front lines is that you really find out what public policies need to change. I remember in CSO, we found out that a farm worker could not get surplus commodities. The food that they have stored up to give away to poor people, farm workers couldn't receive that. You know why? Because in order at that time, in the late 50s, early 60s, in order to be able to get the surplus food, you had to have lived in one county for 12 months. And you had to present rent receipts or utility bills for 12 consecutive months. And if you did not do that, you were not eligible for the surplus food. Isn't that ironic? Farm workers could not get the surplus food. So that was one of the first things we had to change that policy so that the farm workers could get that food. Because farm workers didn't have unemployment insurance at that time. I told the students earlier today that a farm worker, when we first started organizing, said they will put a man on the moon before farm workers get unemployment insurance. And we did. We put a man on the moon in 1969. We didn't get unemployment insurance for farm workers until 1975 when Jerry Brown was elected governor of the state of California, because Reagan had vetoed unemployment insurance 3 sessions in a row after it passed the legislature. So doing this kind of work, it makes you see what policies need to be changed. We were working very hard to end the then Bracero program. And, a lot of people don't know this because you kind of have to be down there again on the front lines. But I remember in Stockton, where I was raised, during World War II, they had the prisoners of war from Japan and Germany in little neat white cottages there at the naval base. And they would bring them into town, take them to the movies, take them out sometimes to do farm work, etc. But the Mexican farm workers that had come in from Mexico to help the United States, during this labor shortage that we had when we sent so many people off to the war, they were behind barbed wire in these ugly, ugly labor camps. and their own relatives were not permitted to visit them. So that was an issue that we had to take on and say, wait a minute, who are the prisoners here? You know, these are people that came in to help the United States to lift their crops during that time. And as you know, this is one of the hot issues that we have today in today's news is that, again, our administration wants to start that old Blessed program again, bring people in, work them, send them back to their native land, right, without giving them a chance to become residents or citizens of this country. So I really honor the work of social work. But the one thing, of course, that we have to do is sort of connect the work that we do with the political world so that people out there that are the recipients of any type of assistance that they might get have to realize, and they have to be made to realize by the people that are helping them, is that they have a responsibility, that they've got to do something for themselves. The biggest thing that, you know, Caesar got through my head, and it was very difficult because in CSO we were so used to doing things to help people and not making too many demands on them except that they come to a meeting once in a while, pack the city council chambers or, you know, get involved in registering voters, et cetera, getting out the vote. But when we started organizing the farm workers, it was a whole different thing because we had to have these workers understand that the only way that they were going to ever get any change in their lives is that they had to do it for themselves. And you're talking to people that were only earning 70 cents an hour at that time when we started, talking about going into homes where people had dirt floors, cardboard and wooden crates for furniture, whose children were hungry, and say to them, you have to join the union, you have to pay $3.50 a month dues, which in today's world would be like saying to somebody, you got to pay $40 a month dues to start this organization. And but you know, that was the biggest thing, to make them understand that they had to be responsible, and it worked. We were able to initially get 1,000 workers to start the organization. We had a convention, and of course the rest is history. We had strikes and boycotts and everything. But these workers, these poorest to the poor, are the ones that marched to Sacramento, you know, 300 miles, marched to the state capitol to get unemployment insurance, the right to organize, the Agricultural Labor Relations Act, and all of these different laws passed to help workers. And somehow it would be so great if we could kind of expand this whole area of social work and community organizing, because God knows that we need it so much in our country today. You know, we have 1 million more poor people this year in our United States of America, which means you're going to need how many more social workers, right, to be able to go out there and help the folks out there that need it. And, of course, eventually to try to make it so that they like the farm workers, because once those farm workers got their union contracts, they didn't need the food stamps. I remember workers coming up to me and saying, hey, we don't need the food stamps anymore. Isn't that great? You know, when we had our workers in the Salinas Valley, by the way, we don't have those contracts anymore. We had a big devastation in 1973 where the Teamsters came in. They made a little plot with Frank Fitzsimmons of the Teamsters Union, the head of the Farm Bureau Federation, Alan Grant, and President Nixon. And they cooked up a little plot to get rid of the United Farm Workers, and they did. I mean, they got rid of a lot of our contracts, so we've been trying to catch up ever since then. But when we had those contracts in Salinas, California, I remember going out there to the fields with one of my daughters, and she said, Mom, look, and I thought something was wrong. I said, what's wrong? She said, look at all the new cars, right? The workers had bought new cars. The workers bought homes. In Delano, California, the first year of our first contracts, 11 farm worker children went to college for the first time. One of them is a doctor, Dr. Yales, you know. And this is what happens when people have that kind of economic stability, that they can send their children to schools and they can buy a home and they can be stable. And so I think that has to be kind of the end result of the work that we do, is to help people so that they can help themselves, so that they can become not only socially stable but also economically stable. And we know that that is harder and harder to do because poverty is increasing. The laws that help poor people become union members are getting more difficult, as we see by this Proposition 75 that's going to be on the ballot on Tuesday. It's aimed directly at the public employees, right? And so while we have the political spectrum is more geared right now towards those that are very wealthy, and it's more against poor people. But you know, we can't give up. We've got to keep people make them understand that they do have the power to make those changes. They have the power through organization, they have the power through advocacy, they have the power through participation. Just doing something as simple as registering to vote, getting out there to vote. And in the farm workers movement, we've been very effective at passing legislation, not only because of the advocacy, but also making sure to support people that are going to get elected, that are going to support the farm workers and working people. So and the people that come out there to help us knock on doors, they're not always U.S. citizens. A lot of them are just what they call green carders, right? They have residency, but they're not citizens yet. And a lot of them are undocumented. They don't even have residency. We have one congresswoman as an example, Hilda Solis, who's a very great advocate in Congress right now. And she is a Democrat. She ran against another Democrat because she felt that he was kind of a Republican light, I think, person, So she ran against him, and no one endorsed her, actually. The congressional colleagues did not endorse her. They were supporting their own colleague. But it was the working people that helped her get elected. And farm workers drove all the way from Fresno, California to Los Angeles, from Blythe, which is near the Arizona border, 4 hours to come to L.A. to knock on doors to get that woman elected. And she won by 30 points. And this is just the power of the people, right? And so that's what I hope, that can be incorporated into the education of social workers, because we just helping people is not enough, In fact, it can actually make people remain victims forever. And we don't want people to remain victims. We want them to understand that they have to have a responsibility to participate in the betterment of their own lives. And if we can teach them that, and sometimes I know that as social workers, people are working for an agency, they can't get involved on the political level, but what they can do is encourage the people that they help to get involved. And I know when I say this, it's kind of like, yeah, you can talk about it, but it's very difficult to do because people have so many people that they have to manage. It's almost impossible. So maybe we need to pass a law someday, like the one they have for nurses, limit the number of families or people that a social worker has to help, right? So that people can do a more effective job. But I'm very honored to receive this gift. I do have put many, many hours of volunteer. In fact, in the United Farm Workers, we were all volunteers because we didn't get paid. And it wasn't right up until the time Caesar died, We got our subsistence, we got our rent, we got our food, $10 a week. Later on, I went up to $40 just we could feed our families, right? But we never really got wages and salaries. It's not that way anymore, by the way. Our new president, Arturo Rodriguez, now people do get salaries, right? But all the time that Caesar was president, people got stipends. So it really was all volunteers. And so I guess if I could count my volunteer years would be, this year I'm celebrating 50 years of volunteer service. 50 years of volunteer service. And my new job as a volunteer is I've started a foundation for community organizing. It's called the Dolores Huerta Foundation. I use my own name because people know me, so I can raise money. And basically, we're hiring organizers, we're training them, we're sending them into communities to help people come together and to take on the issues. We recently had a march in Lamont, California. It's a farm worker area where wages had not been increased for about a decade almost. And we had this march with women and children at the front. We had a big banner that said, "Sueldos justos," just wages. Close to 500 people marched, 15 growers, some of them which hire 3,000 workers, raised the wages from 60 to 80 cents an hour, right? Just with the people marching, right? So this is the kind of work that that we're doing, and there's a lot of young people out there that want to do things, but there's no vehicle for them to organize. So we raise money, we hire organizers, because these days you do have to pay people, right? Not like when we had the $10 a week, and train them, show them how to do community organizing, send them into a community. And we're also now working on a school for organizing, so that way other organizations can send us their people and we can teach them the lessons that we learned by this great man whom Mr. Pertig mentioned, Fred Ross Sr. And you probably never heard of him. Maybe some of you did. But I'm sure a lot of you, if you saw yesterday's paper, you saw the obituary for Eduardo Roybal, the first city councilman elected to Los Angeles? Well, the man who did his campaign and showed him how to organize was Fred Ross Sr. He's also the fellow that got Caesar involved in organizing, got myself involved in organizing. The Supreme Court Justice Cruz Reynoso was one of the people who came out of Fred Ross's organizing. So this man was just a great human being, and we could spend a whole hour talking about what he did, and he was an alumni of USC. So that was so wonderful that one of your own, it's really, I call him the godfather of the Chicano movement in California, the godfather of the Chicano movement, Fred Ross Sr. And we're hoping someday we can really honor him the way he should be honored, and hopefully we will be working on that. So anyway, thank you very much for this beautiful honor, and I'm sure that we'll all get together again sometime. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Look at the camera there.
Thank you, Dolores, for your inspiring words.
Not to mention I have 2 kids who graduated from SC.
Yeah.
One of them is a doctor, and the other is a filmmaker.
Wow.
And your 11th kid is right here with us. Let's introduce Camila.
She has provided us certainly with a legacy. Now I'd like to introduce June Simmons. June has been past chair of the Hall of Distinction nominating committee, and she and Ellen Dunbar and Jim Carls, also Monica White, who could not be here today. Ellen and Jim are vice chairs of the committee, and they're responsible for soliciting and vetting the nominations for Northern and Southern California for the Hall of Distinction. June, would you like to come up?
Thank you. I salute you. This is a life's work that is so impressive, and that's what we're hearing about today. So it is very inspiring, is it not? It's great to live a life of service and values, which is what the social work profession permits us, a certain luxury of emotional and moral lifestyle that we cherish. But to take the time, as we do, through the archives leadership and the leadership of USC, to hold up the work of individuals in order to continue to inspire us to see in a world filled with challenge what a difference a life makes. This week has been so inspiring with Rosa Parks, and that single act, it reminds us, and so that is why Dr. Carls dreamed up the Hall of Distinction and spent some years, as things take years, as you've been telling us, to bring this idea forward, to not forget, to have a way to capture, as the archives does, but then to hold up, to single out, to tell the story and to keep the story told, so that all of us can remember each day, each thing we do, how important it is and what a difference it makes. And none of us do it for the honor. I know the work we've been hearing about with those honored today, none of that is done for the honor, and yet the honor is important. It's important for those individuals, but it's mostly important for us. And so we're very pleased to have been on the founding board of the California Social Work Hall of Distinction. There are not many social work halls of distinction in the nation, and since 2002 we have been identifying a select group of amazing people whose work has made a tremendous difference in academia, in practice, in policy, in changing the world through lives, through communities, through the rules and systems that we have. And so I'm very pleased to introduce Jim Carles and Ellen Dunbar, who are vice chairs of this group. And as they come forward, I'd like to just acknowledge Monica, who could not be here today, who's our chair. And we have several of our board members who are present. Suzanne Dworak-Peck, Ruth Britton, Stephanie Klopfleisch are all here and have been very important members of this work.
I'm Jim Carles. We have, as you will note, 9 inductees for this session today. We won't go through a lot of the detail about each of them, but Ellen and I will take turns in saying a few words about each of them. And we do have members of the families and the individuals here today. This is our first attempt to induct people who are still with us, who are still alive. We still have, in California, we have a long history of people who have contributed to our field, to the practice of social work. And there are on our list people who date back 100 years or so. And we're still hoping to get some of those people into the hall, but we have moved ahead a little bit here, and we will have Francis and Anita and let's see, we have excuse me.
Shouldn't have tried that.
I should have tried. I'm all right. Anyway, I will start. We're going to do this alphabetically, and I'm going to tell you something about our first inductee. And I think this is Chauncey Alexander. Chauncey was a member of our board, our Hall of Distinction board, and worked with us. And at the time we had the policy that you couldn't be alive to be in the hall. But we did talk with Chauncey at that time. We thought he was a natural, and he is. So we're pleased to. I assume everybody here knows who Chauncey Alexander is or was. That he was a great man. He worked with all of us, many of us, and he was the kind of fellow that you would just say he was the greatest social worker that existed in our time. His wife Sally is here, and I would like maybe ask Sally to say a few words. We will ask people those who can, to respond briefly to the nomination, or the induction.
Thank you very much. We're honored. I feel as honored. He died August 30th. That's just around the corner. And I was so sorry that some didn't know that. And we'd had a wonderful memorial. Many of you came to the memorial that we had honoring him. His board of supervisors, every one of them signed an honor. They adjourned the assembly in his honor, and he was a social worker. And that's why we are so proud that he was a social worker. And we just hope that those of you who are continuing your work, that you will just use some of Chauncey's ideas and thoughts, which he spread that around quite a bit too, and enjoy. I thank you.
Chauncey's daughter is also with us.
Yes, thank you. Chauncey's daughter, Sandy Hester, and her husband, Chuck.
Just to let you know that the material about Chauncey and our other inductees is available to you in this format and also on our website, which we do expect to have up in the next 2 weeks, according to the latest information. Mrs. Benedetto has been bugging me about this one. She says, "Why isn't Bob on the website?" We've had a few problems, as you may have guessed, about getting that material together and financing it. So we're hopeful that the last report is that in 2 weeks, by the end of the month, that we'll have the website up and going, and it's SW Hall of Distinction. The next inductee is a person that I do not know because Reverend Dana Bartlett departed from this our life here in 1942. He's nominated by Ralph Fertig, and Ralph came in searching the archives, discovered that Bevan Bartlett was a disciple of Jane Addams and Jacob Riis, worked at Hull House, graduated in theology, but then went into what we would now call social work. Certainly, as we know, our roots are in work with the churches and the settlement houses and so forth. So we're pleased to have as inductee Dana Bartlett, champion of the working class and immigrants, an earlier version of the work done in our own state here and with the farm workers. Dana Bartlett.
Marsena Buck got her MSW at USC in 1965. She began her illustrious career here in the Los Angeles area and ended in Modesto, California, where I now live. She was a great advocate for the poor, for the elderly, for children. She led the Stanislaus County Department of Children's Services to be the first accredited public agency in the Public Child Welfare Agency to get accredited, which was quite an achievement. If you knew her, you saw the life in her that she presented everywhere. Her speeches were heartwarming, made you cry and laugh, one right after the other. She really was inspiring, and we miss her a great deal. Well, I don't know how much I need to say about Frances Feldman. You've already heard a little bit about her today. I must say that when I was a MSW student at USC a long time ago, I was very young. She was already a very formidable figure in that school. And she has remained so through those years. Her work is, there's so much that one could say, but whether she was teaching or conducting groundbreaking studies, establishing innovative programs such as industrial social work, or advising university presidents, or advising almost anyone who could hear, special commissions, corporate heads, anyone who has known her has learned and been changed. Frances, would you like to say something?
I promise this is the last time you'll hear from me this afternoon. But I do want to say thank you to the Hall of Distinction. I feel somehow it's obscene for me to be one of the honorees because I've had such a good time all of these years in doing the things that I did. And to have you recognize them in this special way is heartwarming, but I feel a little guilty. I'm sorry that I don't have relatives here today. I have a substitute for my daughter, Hiroko Yoshimoto, who came down from Ventura. And of course, my husband is on one of these pictures, so I have a relative here in that form. But thank you very much for electing me.
Yeah, it reminds me that Francis and Al are the first husband and wife group in the Hall of Distinction. It's my pleasure now to introduce Myldred Jones, our inductee to the Hall of Distinction. Myldred Jones is with us, and she had a 17-year Navy career, which was one of the first waves. She retired as lieutenant commander. She exercised her humanitarianism through serving as naval liaison officer for both the United Nations and National Red Cross. And at her retirement in 1959, she was director of social services of the Navy Relief Society. She was a consultant to Ronald Reagan when he was governor. Conducted an 18-month study of youth problems in the U.S., in California, and founded the first adolescent hotline, which has since become a model throughout the U.S. and internationally as well. At age 69, she founded Casa Youth Shelter, a temporary shelter for troubled youth. At her 90th birthday, with 450 guests, 4 past presidents sent celebratory greetings, and 24 other presentations, including Secretary General of the United Nations. Myldred Jones received her BA in Sociology and Social Studies at Wittenberg University, did graduate study work at USC, and received her honorary doctorate of public services from Santa Clara University at age 88. So she's still going strong with us. And I don't know, do you want to, can you make it up here to the podium? Sorry, I didn't realize it was portable. And
Good afternoon. It's such a joy and a privilege to be here. Being inducted while I'm still alive is really great because I can be part of it and not just look on from afar. I've always felt it was an honor and a privilege and a great joy to be a social worker. You know, just the term social worker means working with people, being part of them. And in social work, as all of you here today know, it's not just helping people. It's enabling people to help themselves, to be who they really are, and to find out how they can take care of themselves. And that's what makes it such a joy. So I feel deeply honored, highly honored, to have been selected to be inducted into this Hall of Fame. Pardon me, Hall of Distinction. The California Social Work Hall of Distinction. When I got a telephone call telling me I'd been selected for it, I just couldn't believe it. I was overwhelmed, and I still am. But it is truly a great honor, and I thank you so very, very, very much.
Thank you. You may want to know that the term Hall of Distinction was invented by Frances Feldman. When we originally started, we were going to be Hall of Fame. And she says, well, that's very ordinary. Social work deserves a better term, so we became Hall of Distinction at that point. The next inductee is my old friend and colleague, Anita Mackey. Anita is, this is VA of Central California. She was nominated by our chapter in Santa Barbara. And Anita, I can bring the mic to you this time if you'd like to do that. Huh? Or, I know she just flew in from Michigan, and she has been doing all sorts of good things. Most recently, by the way, she gave a talk to our Channel Cities Club in Santa Barbara about her trip to China. So she's just recently back from China. And so she's quite a capable and competent lady. She also, at the moment, is the oldest LCSW in California. She's most famous for her work with veterans and the work that she did in developing veteran services particularly in Central California. She's a native of California. It's Bakersfield, wasn't it, Anita? I think Bakersfield. Anyway, we are very pleased, Anita, to have you join the Hall of Distinction.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, and especially since on January the 1st, I'll be 92. And as I look and see Sally, she probably doesn't remember me, but in 1964, I think the international conference was in Athens, Greece, and your husband, Chauncey, was the leader, and we went with that group at that time. You know, it's really nice to be able to live so long that you can remember things. And I want to say that it's also great when you can think in terms that you are alive and still have young friends. And I'm going to say, one of my friends here today is Lolly Navolio. Would you please stand, Lolly? I knew her folks. And she was just dallying around almost had her PhD in psychology education. And I put a pin in her, and I want to let you know she now has her doctorate. And also, with me here is my dear friend, Jewel Dennis. Where's Jules? Oh, yeah, there she is. Jules, wonderful person who's very active in the Mental Health Association in Santa Barbara, also one of my younger friends. And then someone else that I'm very proud of who's here is my nephew, who is Dr. Stahl. And Dr. Stahl is from British Guiana, one of 4 sons who come to America, all 4 sons doctors. And I want to say that being a social worker is a great profession, And I just have to say this before I sit down, that I love challenging men. So may I tell one incident? I was working for the Veterans Administration, and I felt that they ought to open up so that we could go and have an office in Santa Barbara, California. And they said, okay. And so they opened the office, and they already had one in Long Beach and in San Bernardino. And one was an Anglo, was a Hispanic, and I, an African American. And so when they opened these offices, I didn't feel that we any longer should be GS-11s when we were sitting in offices. I felt that we should be GS-12s. So my boss thought that was a good idea. He was a Southern gentleman. And so he waited a little while, and I said, Arch, he's dead now. Arch, I thought that you were going to write the job description for us to be promoted to GS-12s. He said, oh, I did so for Max. I said, Max? And he said, oh, yes, he supervised 2 people. Remember this. I said, I read the book. The book said that we could not be put up to GS-12s unless they supervise 4 people or in charge of a program. Max only supervises 2 people, and if we all aren't in charge of a program, I don't know what a program is. Ooh, he was so angry, he threw the book at me, and he says, you write it. I took the book, I wrote it, I bypassed it, sent it direct to Civil Service Commission, and in 1969, I want to let you know, all GS-11 social workers in the field were promoted to GS-12s. I just want to say, social work is great, and I'm only sorry that I'm not back with the Veterans Administration now, because when I was in there, we were able to get service connection for a veteran who'd been out of service for 20 years. Why? Because I read the book. Read everything, the fine print, that's the way to survive. And it has certain illnesses that if a veteran comes out of service, even though he had those illnesses in service, he can be service connected. One of them is MS. When this man came into my office 20 years after he'd been out of service, I carefully interviewed him, had it researched. I said, think. He says, I think I went into a hospital in Buffalo, New York. Called Buffalo, New York, got a social worker, spoke real nicely, told her to please research. She says, we found it. a doctor, when this man came out of service within the 7-year limit for MS, says, I think the changes that I see in this veteran's eyes are the beginning of multiple sclerosis. 20 years after service, when he walked in our office in Santa Barbara, we got service connection for him. And my last one, and my last one is the man who came in who was going blind. And we researched and found that he'd been seen in a clinic out in the Aleutian Islands. And it was in the time period for him to get service connection. I'm saying that social workers, don't be lazy. Don't ever say you're tired because you're in the wrong field.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. If we could all be that active that long. Then we have the next person that I have a pleasure of introducing. Also has a great history. Faustina Solis is here. She did outreach to many of the disadvantaged. Her experience included work at the Plaza Community Center in Los Angeles. Then with her MSW, she worked as a psychiatric social worker at Pacific State Hospital, then at LH Child Guidance. She went into public health. She worked with Farm Workers Health Service. She got grant funds from the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Her talents were then recognized by the School of Medicine, University of California, San Diego, where she became first professor of the Department of Community and Family Medicine, then assistant chancellor, and finally, until her retirement, provost at that university. Faustina?
Thank you very, very much, because I feel very humble having learned about all of these other persons who have been given the recognition of distinction today, because they each represented such devotion to the profession and such creativity and energy to it, and I think one has to do it. I made up my mind when I had my MSW at USC that I was never going to stay in the same job for longer than 5 years, because whenever I was older and people asked me, well, you haven't had experience in this area and in this area and this other area, I was going to have had experience in hospitals, in outpatient clinics, in whatever it was, so that my life of career has been very segmented in many ways. And I wanted to say, Dolores, that in that era of Cesar Chavez and the Fred Ross, I don't know if you know that there was a Mexican-American League that was blacklisted, and all of us who belonged to it were blacklisted, and that, to us, was a mark of distinction. And I want to thank the board and the individuals who have selected me for this very, very special distinction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next honoree is Mary Julia Workman, who was with us from 1871 to 1964. She was an activist for social reform and worked for international peace. She was an elementary school teacher, an activist for social welfare, and she worked at the Brownson House Settlement Association in 1901 and led the association in a service to needy Los Angeles residents for 20 years. In 1924, she founded the, I'm going to say it right, the diocese branch of the National Council of Catholic Women. She was the first woman to join the Municipal League and monitor civic services, and was named to the Los Angeles Civil Service Commission from 1927 to 28. During World War II, she championed the civic rights of Japanese Americans, and throughout her life denounced prejudice against African Americans in Los Angeles, writing to the mayor about the deplorable deprivation of civil liberties suffered by the black Angelenos. She helped to establish both the League of Women Voters and the National Conference of Christians and Jews in Los Angeles. In her role as social reformer, civil servant, and peace activist, she had a hand in almost every social welfare effort in Los Angeles over the course of her working life.
The last inductee is a man who, for those of you who went to any of the schools of social work in the state university system, can be thankful. Ernest White. Ernest White was who was with us from 1904 to 1986. Was the man who laid the foundation for the schools of social work in the state of California and the state university system. I think those of you who are, well, so we have some elders here, know that as recently as, say, 50 years ago, we had what, 3 schools of social work in California. USC had a 1-year program at that time, and I think Berkeley and UCLA. Since in the last 50 years, we've added what are now there are 11 accredited schools in the state university system, with 3 more in process. And the man that laid the foundation for that was Ernest White. I'm not sure if I think many of you got a copy, and I won't read it to you, but he's a man who had a considerable background, comes out of Nebraska. His doctorate from the University of Chicago in '32. That's before you, Anita. Before me. He was formerly the executive director of the Council on Social Work Education, former dean of the School of Social Work at San Diego State University. And as I mentioned, he was the man who joins the Hall of Distinction because of his significant contributions to the development of social work education in California. And that's the last of our nominees. Again, our inductees. I think I would like to remind people that the copy that you see here will be available on the website. The school here is also installing a kiosk. June, you didn't mention that, did you? Mind if I do it? There's been an allocation of funds so that we will have a virtual Hall of Distinction in the lobby of the School of Social Work, and hopefully it's an idea that some of our other schools of social work will be able to pick up. We hope that the new social workers coming into the field will have relatively easy access to those who went before, and will have also some inspiration from the work that they have done. These are the role models we see for our future generations of social work, and we do hope that the Social Work Hall of Distinction, California Social Work Hall of Distinction, by the way, will continue to prosper. Ellen?
Just thank you to all of you, the friends, family, and awardees who are here, and those who remember the others who cannot be here.
I would like to extend my personal congratulations to the inductees and thank all of our board and the individuals who helped make this luncheon and this annual meeting successful. Would the board members stand, please, and be recognized? The CSWA board members and I'd like to particularly thank Alma Folks, who, where is she? Alma? She organized the silent auction, and she did a wonderful job. So, and Latasha Young, who really coordinated this dinner. Thank you very much, Latasha. And thank you all for supporting the California Social Welfare Archives. And we're glad that you got here. Bye.